11. This is for the week of April the 26th through the 30th. Let's go ahead and look at this. Conditional relative frequencies and associations. After further discussion, the students involved in designing the superhero comic strip decided that before any decision is made, a more careful look at the data on the special powers of superhero character would possess was needed. There is an association between gender and superpower response if the superpower responses of males are not the same as the superpower responses of females. Examining each row of the table can help determine whether or not there is an association. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at this. It says, recall the two-way table from the previous lesson. If you remember, this was the two-way lesson, or two-way table that we did in lesson 10. Alright, that deals with males, the number of males, the number of females that chose each superpower, and then we looked at the totals. A conditional relative frequency, alright, there's a vocabulary word. A conditional relative frequency compares a frequency count to the marginal total that represents the condition of the interest. For example, the condition of interest in the first row is females. Alright, so this row right here is females. The row conditional relative frequency of females responding invisibility as their favorite superpower is 48 over 228. Alright, so if I'm looking for the row conditional relative frequency of invisibility, there were 48 females that chose invisibility over the total number of females, which was 228, or approximately 211 thousandths. This conditional relative frequency indicates that approximately 21 1/10% of females prefer invisibility as their favorite superpower. Similarly, 27 over 222, or approximately 122 thousandths, or 12 2/10% of males prefer invisibility as their favorite superpower. Alright, so how is relative frequency calculated? Well, it's calculated by dividing the frequency by the total observations, or the number that chose that power, over the total number of males or females, whichever one you're looking at. How could we determine the relative frequency for only the female students? Well, we can determine this by dividing the frequency by the total number of females. Alright? Conditional relative frequencies are found by dividing the frequency by the marginal total. Alright, so if I wanted to do to fly, I would do 49 divided by 228, and I would get approximately 21.5%. How would we interpret that conditional relative frequency? Well, that 21.5% means that 21.5% of the females surveyed chose to fly as their favorite superpower. How does this compare with the same cell in the relative frequency table from example 1? Well, 10 9/10% of the students surveyed were females who chose to fly as their favorite superpower. Alright? So let's go ahead and look at this. Exercise number 1, use the frequency counts from the table in exploratory challenge 1 to calculate the missing row of conditional relative frequencies. Round the answers to the nearest thousandth. Alright, so now here's what I want you to do. I want you to pause your video, and I would like for you to calculate these. Get used to calculating them. Once you've done that, unpause the video and make sure that you do have the same values that I have. Alright, so these are the values that you should have. Like I said, make sure you have those values. Suppose that a student is selected at random from those who completed the survey. What do you think is the gender of the student selected, and what would you predict for this student's response to be a superpower question? Alright, so let's go back and look. What would you expect the gender? Well, let's look at this. 228 were female, 222 were males. So that was almost the same number of males and females. So really, it's very hard for us to determine that more than likely the student would be male or more than likely it would be female. So since the number of males and females were the same, we're close to the same, sorry. I didn't mean to say the same. They could be male or female. Alright, and then let's go back to, it wants to know what do you think their superpower question, or their response to the superpower question would be. Well, let's go back and look. Looking at my frequencies, it looks like freeze time is the most popular. So even though they could have chosen something different, freeze time was the most popular. So we'll say freeze time. Suppose that the student is selected at random from those who completed the survey. If the selected student is male, what do you think was his response to the selection of a favorite superpower? Explain your answer. So let's look at males. All right, what is the most popular? Well, if I look at this, it looks like freeze time was most popular for males. Suppose that the student is selected at random from those who completed the survey. If the selected student is female, what do you think was her response to the selection of a favorite superpower? Alright, so let's go look at our females. Looking at females, our most popular looks like telepathy was the most popular for females. What superpower was selected by approximately 1/3 of the females? Alright, so 1/3 of the females. Well, let's look at this. We got to find 1/3 of 228, which would be 228 over 3. That would be approximately 76. Alright. Now, we do not have exactly 76 females, but which one is closest? Telepathy was selected by approximately 1/3 of the females. What superpower was selected by approximately 1/3 of the males? Well, we're going to go back and do that the same way. So 1/3 of the males, 222 of them. So 222 divided by 3. That would be, what, 74? So it looks like freeze time determine each answer from the conditional relative frequency table. We just multiplied, and you think about 1/3, that's 0.3333. So we could look at our decimals and see which one's closest to that decimal, or we took 1/3 of the total number of students. All right. All right, exploratory challenge number 2. Possible association based on conditional relative frequencies. 2 categorical variables are associated if the row conditional relative frequencies or column relative frequencies are different for the rows or columns of the table. For example, if the selection of superpowers selected for females is different than the selection of superpowers for males, then gender and superpower favorites are associated. This difference indicates that knowing the gender of a person in the sample indicates something about their superpower preference. The evidence of an association is strongest when the conditional relative frequencies are quite different. All right, quite different. If the conditional relative frequencies are nearly equal for all categories, then there's probably not an association between variables. All right, so in other words, there is an association when it does make a difference whether you're male or female as to what power you are choosing. If there's a difference, and it says there is a greater association when that difference is bigger. Now, if everything is pretty much the same, there's no association because it doesn't matter. Males and females pretty much have the same choices. All right. Association can be challenging. So let's think about this for just a second. If you know that a person is female, could you predict that she spends more than 30 minutes getting ready for school? Maybe. Girls may tend to spend more time getting ready than boys. So there is an association between gender and whether a student spends more than 30 minutes getting ready for school. If you know that a person is male, could you predict that country music is his favorite type of music? Probably not. Just because he's male does not mean that he likes country music. So in this case, there is no association between gender and music preference. All right? If dogs are classified as large, medium, and small based on weight, are small dogs more likely to pass an obedience course? I don't know. There's no association there because we can't determine that small dogs are going to pass better than big dogs. All right? There's strong evidence of an association when there is a noticeable difference in conditional relative frequency. What is a notable difference in conditional relative? Well, I'm getting tongue-tied here. What is a noticeable difference in relative frequencies? This is subjective, all right? You should use your best judgment. You are going to be able to see a noticeable difference, all right? If they are off by like a hundredth of a point, that's probably not much of a noticeable difference. All right. So let's look at exercises 6 through 10. Examine the conditional relative frequencies in the two-way table of conditional relative frequencies you created in exercise 1. Note that for each superpower, the conditional relative frequencies are different for males and females and males. For what superpower would you say that the conditional relative frequency for females and males are very different? So let's go back and let's look and see which one is very different. All right, so this one, not a whole lot of difference. This one could be. This one could be. But look at this one. 0.004 and 0.113. That's quite a bit of difference. So the most noticeable difference, I think you're going to see would be super strength. But we could add invisibility and telepathy in there also. All right? So we'll say telepathy, super strength, and invisibility. All right. For what superpower are the conditional relative frequencies nearly equal for males and females? Well, let's look. Which one's nearly equal? Well, if you look at this, we've already said these three have a noticeable difference. The only one that's closest to being equal is to fly. All right? It is almost equal. Suppose a student is selected at random from the students who completed the survey. If you had to predict which superpower this student selected, would it be helpful to know the student's gender? Explain your answer. So we do have noticeable differences in our conditional relative frequencies, so it would be helpful to know the student's gender. Since we do have noticeable differences, it would be helpful to know their gender. Is there evidence of an association between gender and a favorite superpower? Explain why or why not. Alright, so let's think about association. Association means that there is a noticeable difference between genders and superpowers. We've already said that we had noticeable differences in 3 of our categories. So since there is a noticeable difference, then yes, there is an association. What superpower would you recommend the students at Rufus King High School select for their superpower, their superhero character? Justify your choice. Alright, so this is your opinion. You need to fill it in and make sure it's filled in. Don't write the word opinion. You need to answer that question. Alright, exploratory challenge number 3. Students were given the opportunity to prepare for a college placement test in mathematics by taking a review course. Not all students took advantage of this opportunity. The following results were obtained from a random sample of students who took the placement test. Alright, so let's look. They took the review course, placed in Math 200, placed in Math 100, placed in Math 50. This was our total. Did not take the review course, and where they were placed, and then the total. Math 200 is the highest math, then it gets lower from there. So just so it can help you understand this table. Alright, so do you think there's an association between taking a review course and the student's placement in a math class? We'll discuss that here in just a few minutes. If you knew that a student took a review course, would it make a difference in what you predicted for which math course they were to be placed in? Once again, we'll discuss that, but probably. Do you think taking a course caused a student to place higher in the math placement? All right, well, let's talk about this chart. All right, so it says construct a conditional relative frequency table of the above data. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do this. Pause your video and make sure that you have the same answers or figure these out and then make sure you have the same answers that I do once you are finished. Alright, make sure you have the same answers. Let's go ahead and look at number 12. Based on the conditional relative frequencies, is there evidence of an association between whether a student takes the review course and the math course in which the student was placed? Alright, so let's look. Is there a noticeable difference between the students who took the review course and where they were placed? Well, if you will look, that's quite a bit of difference here. Alright? So there is an association because there are noticeable differences. Looking at the conditional relative frequencies, the proportion of students who placed into Math 200 is much higher for those who took the review course than those who did not. One possible explanation is that taking the review course caused improvement in placement test scores. What is another possible explanation? Well, it could be simply the fact that those who took the review course are interested in math. Alright? Or were already better prepared. So those who took the course may be interested in math. Now consider the following statistical study. 50 students were selected at random from students at a large middle school. Each of these students were classified according to sugar consumption, high or low, and exercise level, high or low. The resulting data are summarized in the following frequency table. Alright, sugar consumption, high, low, total, here's their exercise level. Alright, so it says calculate the conditional relative frequencies. So once again, go ahead and pause your video. Go ahead and create those conditional relative frequencies. Once you have done that, then go ahead and pop back on and make sure that you have the same values that I do in my chart. Alright, so go ahead and compare your charts. Let's look at the next question. The question states, is there evidence of an association between sugar consumption category and exercise level? Support your answer using conditional relative frequencies. So sugar consumption versus exercise level. Alright, look at these. There's quite a bit of a difference. There is a noticeable difference. So therefore, we can say that yes, there is a an association. All right. Do you think it is reasonable to conclude that high sugar consumption is the cause of the observed differences in the conditional relative frequencies? What other explanations could explain a difference in the conditional relative frequencies? All right, so let's think about this for just a second. Do you think that high sugar consumption is the cause? So once again, this is an opinion question. Do you think the high sugar level causes these significant differences? All right, so you need to answer this question. Guys, make sure they are answered before you turn your packet in. All right, guys, have a great evening.